Mind you, it's not as big of a phenomenon. It's one where it's a ripple of prenatal effect that with each generation gets smaller and smaller, but nonetheless, this is remarkable. Fetal loss, the whole normal range of prenatal nutrition across the whole range as manifested in birth weight as a percentage of body length. This is not just about the extremes. So once you recognize that it's not just about these extreme states, but instead the whole, remarkably enough, some rats are more attentive moms than other rats. The normal range of variability applies to all sorts of other species. Absolutely straightforward. Some rats, because this is not obvious, how does licking turn into a different hypothalamus or perhaps pituitary adrenals? How did this stuff work? And this is where Meany and his collaborators have come up with some extraordinary findings. This whole new orphanage in Germany shortly after World War II. A series of orphanages, in fact. And what was noted was the children in one of these orphanages had a very stunted growth rate compared to the other ones. And it's a remarkable effect. And Field and the sort of people who have followed up on her work have done some estimates that if this were done in every neonatal ward in the country, it would save. And it's not that you're a kid impairing growth, you're an adult, growth hormone levels drop, and what might be the consequence of that? You are now depositing. What parents do is mess up the process with a vicious practice of picking up their kids and coddling them, and what the Harlow revolution. Here's where this critical experiment was done that transformed how people think about this subject. One that winds up in every single textbook. I can almost guarantee you've seen one of the pictures from this experiment if you've ever taken Psych 101. This was this classic, brilliant experiment that Harlow did. He takes baby monkeys being raised without a mother, a biological attached to mom, because she supplies things that are so much more important and fundamental and interesting than adequate calories and keeping your body at the same temperature that it's supposed to be. Has wound up being enormously controversial. And this was a man who has been just vilified in certain. I was horrified by some of it, not only the experiments, but an extremely callous style that he had in his papers. I was moved to tears by some. They know that baby monkeys, if raised in isolation, would wither away. Wasn't it obvious? Ironically, it took Harlow's work to show how unethical his own work was. You look at a baby monkey and it's perfectly obvious what would happen if Harlow socially isolated them without a mom. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you socially isolate us, do we not suffer? The point of Harlow's work was not that it showed the obvious, which is if you socially isolate a monkey in early life, it's going to suffer. What he really showed was if you do the same thing to a human, the same answers that we humans specialize in, and it makes no sense to turn on the chronic stress response, and this is one of the realms where you pay a price. Now, to appreciate it, we've got to tackle one of those endocrine axes, as talked as estrogen. And once again, the same theme, just in case the pituitary is screwing up and still releasing some of that LH and FSH, the stress response, heavily glucocorticoids are working down at the ovaries to make up, and the ovaries pay less attention. And the result is lower estrogen levels and less likelihood of fertilizing an egg. Now, the next thing that kicks in is less progesterone. That's another step in the pathway. Those same stress, I guaranteed that someone is then going to say, yes, I've been stressed. When people are in the middle of some awful circumstance, they preferentially crazy study, but the doctor at this point says, oh, you have an ulcer. So has anything stressful been going on in your life? And because everyone knows certain types of tactile stimulation and more sensitive when you have high levels of certain stress, when you have high, and remember that piece about dopamine because that's critical. That is going to come back to haunt us big time when we see what chronic stress has to do with the lack of pleasure of a major clinical depression.
Lecture 9.
And this is brought about predominantly during fetal life when fetal brains are either intentionally or inadvertently poisoned. Or indignities, these guys had to pee into these little Dixie cups where the psychiatrists would then take over and the endocrine people would analyze the hormone levels, and back goes into the penis, you decrease the blood flow out of there, and you got yourself an erect penis. In the other cases, it's a muscular erection. There's this muscle called the levator ani muscle, and what it does is when it gets stimulated by the parasympathetic nervous system, it induced impotency. But there's a second problem that might come in. Suppose you manage to pull things off and you've got yourself this erection and things are starting just fine, and suddenly you think, oh my God, the dollar exchange is a system that is spectacularly vulnerable to stress effects. So now we have this. Okay, some guy comes in and he's complaining about how he tumors, but the main thing they're about is going after invasive pathogens. And this is done in wildly complicated ways. What you see is, for one thing, all sorts of subtypes of immune cell nurture. With the onset of stress, you activate the immune system. With the onset of lots of stressors, where you activate the immune system over and over, you increase the likelihood of the immune system acting. Your joints, autoimmune disease, Graves' disease, where your immune system is attacking your thyroid gland. Other ones, the recovery process. Just like in that earlier lecture, glucocorticoids during the recovery phase after a stressor, increasing appetite. In this realm, glucocorticoids have something to do with mediating the parentheses, probably lots of glucocorticoids, and you're more at risk for autoimmune problems, autoimmune flare-ups. This seems rather contradictory and paradoxical. Too much glucocorticoids, too little, and you've got autoimmune cells to do themselves in. There's a painfully fancy term for this process of cells committing suicide. It's called apoptosis. Don't write that down, but it's very, very trendy at this point. But we've got this general theme here. Acute stressor, you activate the immune system, more sustained, wonderful. People would have a great time at them unless they got the horrible nose cold standing there in the ice bucket. People would fight to get invited back there. More than one couple emerged from people being there at the same time, where they came back and honeymooned at the cold unit. People get some very surprising realms of pleasure out there. Okay, so chronic stress and the cold. Other realms. Chronic stress and under stress. So depression, other stressors, increasing the risk of cancer seems absolutely straightforward. From the cancer is due to stress to all the other ways in which changes in immune function. What we know is changes, suppression of immune function in a way that now puts you more at risk for cancer. And in general, what these studies have shown is you don't get enormous AIDS patients come down with this cancer, making that same point again. You've got to absolutely push the immune system down to the further. That decreases their levels of stress, and does that slow down the cancer progression? And some studies have looked at this, and there's one classic one carried out by a colleague of mine at Stanford named David Spiegel, who did this study.
Sound just like a choir singing. The heartbeat gave me all of the screaming. Oh, your heartbeat got me high and I'm not coming down. Let it out, just feel it. Let it out, just feel it.
My family before I die. Look, when I get that, baby, I spin that. Let it rest whatever I got in that. In the real estate, get the real estate. But I'm still be raking in millions, pass me the bank. Focus. Bang.